Linx is a low-code backend development platform that allows you to do integration, automation, and API creation with ease. Linx has two components to it: a Linx designer, where the application will be created, debugged, and tested, and a Linx server, where your application will be hosted and monitored. This is the Linx designer. Here you will create your application, test it, and debug it to make sure that it fulfills all of your business needs. Linx works with what we call plugins. A plugin is essentially a subset of pre-created components that you use to create your application. For this demo, we're going to install the database plugin as well as the REST plugin, because we are going to create a very simple REST API that pulls data from a database. To start, we're going to use the simple REST host component. This component allows us to create an API by using a wizard. Before we can actually create the API, we need to rename our solution so that we know how to identify it. To make data management more simple, we're going to import what we call a type. Types are essentially how Linx handle data. They are visualized JSON objects. What I'm going to do is I'm going to import a JSON object that I pre-created. We're going to call our type products. When we open products, we can see each field in the JSON object now clearly visualized. Now that we have the type, we can start by creating our API. First, let's set the base URI. Next, we need to define operations. Operations are essentially endpoints. I'm going to create one called getData. Then we also need to set the response body. I'm going to set the response body to be a list of products because we want to send a list of products as a JSON object back when the API is called. Once we hit save, the endpoints are created for us as operations. Inside of this operation, we will now need to build our application logic. To retrieve data from our database, I'm going to use an execute SQL component. Here we can execute an SQL query on any database. We need to set our database connection string. It is important to note that we can connect to SQL Server, Oracle, or any ODBC database. I'm just going to paste the connection string that I've pre-created. Next, we need to set our SQL. The SQL script can either be created by yourself, or you can use Linx to generate a SQL script for you. Once your SQL script is created, you can also test it from within Linx. You have full control over how data is returned and managed. I'm going to set the return options to list of rows because I want to retrieve an entire list of products. Next, we need to return the list that we retrieved from our SQL script. And that's it. We've created an API with a very simple endpoint that will retrieve data from a SQL Server database. To make testing easier, I'm going to set API documentation on. Then I'm going to debug my API. I'm going to specifically debug the REST host and then open the Swagger documentation. Here's the Swagger documentation generated by Linx. Now we can use this documentation to execute the API. And here we can see the list of products being retrieved by the API. We can also see that the operation fired within Linx. Now that we've tested our application, we are ready to deploy it to a Linx server. To do this, simply click on the deploy button and then select the server that you want to deploy to. Once the application has been deployed, it will be hosted on a Linx server. Here you can see a few Linx applications that I'm hosting on my Linx server, and there is my REST API. In order for the REST service to function, it will need to be turned on the Linx server. Here we have a little dashboard that will show us all executions of all endpoints in our API. Let's test it again. I can simply use the same Swagger documentation as the base URI has not changed. I'm going to execute it, and then when we head back to the dashboard, we'll be able to see that the API endpoint has been called. This is just one example of something that you can do with Linx. You can do any backend development such as integrations or automations. For example, you can read files, create files, send emails, and much more. Thank you for watching this demo of Linx.